So, Sandy, tell us how you began.
Okay, you begin by making a simple chain of 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So you begin with just a simple chain of 16, and the pattern is going to be worked in the back loop, not in both loops of each chain. So when you pick up a stitch to move to your next row, you're just going to grab one, not the usual two that you would grab if you were doing other crafting projects, which would go through both loops on the top.
Okay, so what's the next step after the chains?
Okay, the first row is going to be, you're going to start with a single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So this is the first, this is the second. Once again, just pick up the back loop. So that's your first single crochet. There's your second single crochet. And there's your third single crochet. Once again, back loops only. And then you're going to do 9 half doubles. And a half double is merely yarning over, sticking it through the back loop. Now you have 3 on, and you're going to pull through all 3. That's a half double crochet, just to refresh your memory. You're going to do that for a total of 9 on the chain. Then you're going to finish single crochets in the last 3 stitches, chain 1 and turn.
Okay, so now we're on row 2.
Okay, row 2, you're only going to use 2 stitches in this entire pattern. You're going to start this row with 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you're going to do 5 half double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to finish this row out by doing 5 single crochets. You're going to chain 1 and turn. Now the rest of the pumpkin is basically just repeating these 2 rows back and forth. Every other row is going to be 3 singles, 9 half doubles, 3 singles, and then the next row when you chain and turn is going to be 5 singles, 5 half doubles, finishing with 5 singles, and turn. And basically when you look at the pattern, it's going to tell you how long you go for, and then ultimately what you're going to end up with is a piece that starts to look like this. Now the fun part about this pattern, and I think everybody knows with crocheting, if you make a mistake, it's really hard to see. So don't worry about it. I've made some pumpkins where I've inadvertently only done 4, and I'll add it in on the next row. So, follow the pattern as best you can, but after a few rows, this is what you're going to have. And you can see some go up and then they go down, which basically forms the ridges in the pumpkin.
Okay, what's the next step?
Okay, well, once you've completed all 26 rows, you're going to have a piece about this big. But what I did to make it a little bit easier to see was I changed yarn and I used a larger hook. So see, you can actually make these any size you'd like, which is how we ended up with the 3 different pumpkins. But once again, what you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half, and you're just going to slip stitch these 2 edges together by sticking your hook through and pulling it through both. You're just going to grab a front loop and a back loop, and you're just going to slip stitch down the whole row. And what you're going to end up with, once again, I'm going to grab a different piece, is basically a tube. When you get it slip stitched all the way down, you're going to pull that loop through and you're going to knot the end, and you're going to end up with a tube, which is basically the start of your pumpkin.
What's next?
Okay, then we're going to start finishing our pumpkin. And what you're going to have is 2 lengths of yarn. The longer one I stick through, the shorter one, all you're going to do is just catch around the edge of the pumpkin. No particular way, you just want to get all the way around it. And you're going to pull the yarn through, and you're going to start gathering this edge up to close the bottom of the pumpkin. So you just kind of weave it through, grabbing stitches wherever, because you're really not going to see much of this. This is actually going to be the bottom of the pumpkin. And you just tighten it as you go. And when you get it all the way around, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a closed bottom that's going to look something like that. Now, sometimes you'll have like a little hole. You can go back and forth, because remember, this is going to be the bottom of the pumpkin. You're really not going to see either end of the pumpkin once you get it shut. Once you get that done, what we're going to do is we're going to stuff the pumpkin. Now, remember I said stick the longer thread through so that it comes up in the top. And then all I've done, let me unknot that so you can see this a little better, is I used some fiber fill and just stuffed the pumpkin. And once you start stuffing it in there, you can see how it begins to form a little round ball. You can use scraps of material to fill this, anything that you have around the house. This is basically a scrap project, and you can see I have all kinds of little balls of yarn. Doesn't take a whole lot. If you run out, you can actually make pumpkins in multiple colors. You can just attach yarn. Anything that you attach, you can just knot and then hide the yarn inside. Once you get this stuffed, then all you're going to do is you can either use this piece of yarn is to catch this edge and pull it shut, which will then make your little round pumpkin. The one that's sticking through, once this edge is closed, you're going to go back and forth through the center of the pumpkin using a yarn needle and pull it as squashed as you'd like.
So tell us again how you close the pumpkin.
Okay, once again, you're going to do the same on the top that you did on the bottom. You're just going to run your needle along the edge, just catching, some of the stitches. No particular order. Just make sure that there's not great big gaps. And what you're going to do is you're just going to keep pulling this tighter and tighter as you go around. Let's get this one completely so you can see what happens, because it'll only take a minute to get around. Just a couple more grabs. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to gently pull this so that it starts to close up the circle here. Now, since the yarn is going through the middle, it will tighten up slightly as you go. If this hole does not completely close the way you want, you can just go back and forth across, catching your needle and bringing it up, because once again, you're not going to see the top of the pumpkin either. So you can just go back and forth, grabbing the yarn, coming up through. Now the pattern gives real specific instructions how to do this, but I just want you to know it's not that difficult to do. And when you do start to pull this, it does start to squash the pumpkin down and give it a little more shape. Now, just to make sure that it doesn't loosen, what I'll do is stick the needle through, come through the bottom of the pumpkin, pulling it through, and then I'll go back through, going opposite side, just to give it a little bit firmer, hold on the yarn. Just give it a little pull through. And then when you get the pumpkin the shape you want, you can just catch this and knot it off.
Okay, can you show us how to make the pumpkin stalk?
Okay, the pumpkin stalk is relatively easy. The instructions are on the printed sheet. The hardest part about it for a lot of people, if you've never made a magic ring before, is that's how you start the stalk. And the stalk is going to look like this. It's basically, this is all just a spiral of single crochets, which is real easy. And then this is single crochets with chain, and then you go through it. And these are real easy to make. But I do want to try to give you a video, and I'm not the best at magic loops or the magic rings either. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to hold the yarn and you're going to go across 3 fingers, grab it down here, wrap it around, and then bring it over the top. So on the bottom of your hand you should have an X. On the top you're going to have 2 just loops. What you're going to do is you're going to stick your crochet hook underneath, grab this second loop, bring it through and pull it around so that it's wrapped around the hook. Then you're going to go back under the second yarn away from your hook, and you're just going to pull this through that loop. And what you end up with is a ring. And basically what you do, this tail will pull this ring tighter. So that's how you end up with the top that doesn't have that hole. Whereas if you would like do a chain or a single crochet and then go into that, you'd always have that hole. Once you get your magic loop done, then what you're going to do is you're going to take your yarn and you're going to start with your single crochets into this big hole. And the pattern starts with 5 single crochets in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then what you're going to do, I'm going to take my hook off of this so you can see, is this tail that's left, you basically get your single crochets lined up, and then you're going to pull this tail while you hold that, and it tightens it down into a little tiny ring where there's not a hole in the center. And then basically what you're going to do is you're just going to single crochet around this for 5 different rounds, and then finish with the 6th round, which is just single crochets and chains.
Okay, what's the next step?
Okay, we're down to the last step, and basically once you've finished your stalk for the pumpkin, you're going to put it on your needle, and all you're going to do is just jab it right straight through your pumpkin, bringing the needle through the bottom, and you're going to pull the little cap down, and then you can just knot off at this end, and you have completed your little pumpkin. Now, to do some of these other ones in the different sizes that I have, once again, you can change your weight of yarn. And if you do change the weight of yarn, you're also going to change the hook. So if you look, if it's a heavier gauge yarn, you're going to increase the size of the hook. I think I did this one with either a J or a K, which will give you a bigger pumpkin. You can also, I had some scraps of yarn left, and I doubled up the yarn so that I could make a different looking pumpkin. But all you have to do is, sometimes just by increasing the weight of the yarn, it's going to make a bigger pumpkin. Sometimes you can get really creative and just add stitches. And basically what I found is if you want to do this, I added like an extra 5 stitches, and then it will just lengthen that rectangle. Now this one looks kind of funny, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to make a face for him so he doesn't look as unusual as he does right now.